Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. In today's episode, I interviewed Tanya Murphy, the owner of Trips Alive, a cruise planning franchise and avid traveler in her own right. I started off by asking Tanya, why would she go into this business? Let's listen to what she has to say.
When I quit my corporate job, I envisioned myself going on this quest to find the perfect career choice for me. And I was like, I'm going to have all this time to look into my soul and find the absolute right thing for me. And I didn't do any of that. I didn't do any of that. I did look at different, opportunities that were out there. I looked at different franchises, and travel just always resonated with me. I couldn't figure out how people made money doing that because I had always just planned my travel on my own. So I was like, how does that even work? But, come to find out, it does work and travel advisors do still exist. And I literally kind of said, you know what? This isn't that big of a deal. I did actually choose a franchise that was on the list of the top home-based franchises, the top, low-cost franchises. And for the investment that I made, I thought to myself, well, you know what? Here's the test. If I can't make that amount of money back, then I shouldn't be in business for myself doing anything ever. Right. So let me try this and see. It'll either work or it won't, and I'll be okay either way. And that's how it happened.
Well, Tanya has a couple of gems here. She views herself as an escapee for corporate America. But but it's the part that comes next that I really love that perhaps a lot of us can relate to, because anytime we go on the next step in the next journey, she felt like she was going on a quest. She was going to find the right thing. Many of our listeners can understand that and identify with that sentiment. And I love the next part she says too. That didn't happen. Look, corporations are phenomenal, and sometimes we just have the desire to do something more. That's how Tanya felt. That's how I felt, and really that's how many of us feel. If you're listening and you feel that desire, we've got a lot of free resources on our website at mkebusinesscoach.com. Want to encourage you to go ahead and check those out to get an insight into this world. But importantly, Tanya thought her journey was going to be a whole lot different than it turned out to be. This is true at every stage of growth. We have visions, we have ideas, we have plans, we put budgets together, we do all sorts of stuff, but opportunities come along in different sizes and shapes. That's what it really means to be a business owner and be able to embrace that. Okay. We got to get out there and we got to kick the tires and find out what a great idea really looks like. Sometimes we got to get out there and fail forward fast. There's lots of ways that we can really get out and do it. And sometimes we got to do a little customer discovery and figure out what our customers really want versus what's driving us internally. So one quote that stood out to me, which was really amazing, is that Tanya said, look, for the cost of the franchise, if I can't make that type of money back, I should not be in this business. She counted the cost. She figured out what it was going to take to be successful, and then she dove in and she did it. I got to tell you, how many people I know, they frankly don't necessarily count the cost. They've got a gut feel. They've got an instinct. They've got some people on the team saying that. Maybe someone from higher down passes them a strategic plan they need to go ahead and implement. That's not always the best way to go. As business growth consultants, we work with businesses all the time. They're looking to grow, and oftentimes what they really got to do is evaluate that cost. It's going to come down to funding. Maybe it's external funding. Maybe it's internal resources you need to put in. By the way, sometimes we're looking at funding, we're talking about actually allocating people. You're going to allocate equipment. You got to change up how your line's going to actually work. There's a lot of pieces that are in there. Many businesses have the option to self-fund. Some have got to bring some things in from the outside. It is a lot of pieces to not only juggle, but keep your business going on at the same time. This is a spot we advise people. Happy to talk to anyone about that. Just reach out to us again at mkebusinesscoach.com. I went on to ask Tanya about why a franchise. Let's listen to what she says.
So for people who, like me, who are not or don't consider themselves to be born entrepreneurs or haven't grown up with entrepreneurship in their family and have been in an employee and in an employee mindset, kind of your whole life. For me, I understood that if I wanted to get into the travel industry, I didn't know anything about the travel industry. I mean, I knew about it from the consumer side. I was a world traveler myself, but I had no idea about the business side of travel. What does that look like? How do you do it? Right? And to me, the investment was worth being handed a system, a process, a way of doing things that I knew nothing about. And having come from a financial services background, I worked in the home office of Northwestern Mutual here in Milwaukee. So I never sold, but I learned a lot from people who did sell. And I saw this as a way to hit the ground running. I don't have to build the website. I don't have to go out and get a CRM. I don't have to build relationships with suppliers. They've already done that. All I have to do is what I've watched every financial representative do for 15 years, 16 years, which is let everybody know what you're doing and try to get in front of them and ask them for their business and then figure it out, right? So for me, it was a way to tap into expertise that I didn't have.
I think this is a great insight into exactly the type of analysis that anyone needs to do when you're looking at processes. I would add that there's a lot that is similar here when you're looking at an acquisition or if you want to grow natively into a new area. The biggest value you should be getting from any franchise or joining with a franchise or choosing to license under a franchise is that systems and processes are already put in place. They've already got a vendor list to be able to handle that. They've already got the website set up and the layout already figured out for you. That's an essential part of what you're trying to build out. Here's a cheat code for all other businesses that aren't necessarily franchises. Franchises have figured out the secret is in the processes. And that's a spot, again, as business growth consultants at MKE Business Coach, we look at that a lot. Where are your processes and how are you moving forward in order to make those where they need to be? So as you evaluate it, are you better off buying the franchise model? There is a cost for that to get in. You can build it yourself. Sometimes it's not necessarily that you think you can build ones that are fancier or better looking, but ultimately it's better for the customer. You have to evaluate these by looking at the customer first when you're looking at this. We help businesses with this all the time. I want to encourage you to chat with us. Now, on the other side, there are lots of business owners who are interested in starting their own franchise. Again, it comes down to systems and processes, and are they scalable and can you replicate them and roll them out? Really essential. And if you don't have it understood, you don't have it documented, you don't have it quite figured out, it's going to be really difficult to scale and to grow effectively how you need it. And that may be a plateau point that you're really struggling with. Now, Tanya mentioned really briefly that she hadn't had any sales experience. So now she's going to have to get into the world of selling. Welcome to being the business owner. A lot of times you're the primary one out there doing business development and selling processes. Let's listen to how she got that ramped up for herself.
Where I started was, I think, where anybody in sales starts, which is you want to talk to anyone and everyone about what you do. Anyone who can fog a mirror is your client, your potential client, right? So I did a lot of networking. I joined a lot of networking groups. I, of course, let everyone in my existing natural market know what I was doing and what I was up to. I also did some booth events, right? Where you buy a little booth for $50 or $250 or whatever at whatever event it is. And you put your shingle out there and you tell people, what you're doing and you build your list that way. And those were really the main things that I did in the beginning. And now we're at the point where most of our customer acquisition actually comes from existing customers, either in the form of repeat business or the referrals they give us to their family and friends. I do plug into some marketing that the franchise does on my behalf, and it's for what I pay for it. It's great. And they're getting better and better at that. So I do get some random phone calls from people that I've never heard of before. But for the most part, customer acquisition now is about keeping our current clients happy and keeping them coming back to us and keeping them recommending us to their friends and family. And it's kind of gotten to the point where that has snowballed quite a bit.
This is great. Anytime we're looking at a new business segment, looking at doing some type of expansion, going someplace new, marketing oftentimes gets impacted by the shiny object syndrome. We got to stop for a moment and focus on what's our end goal and then follow a consistent plan to be successful. We got to evaluate if our marketing is working, being able to shift if it's not. Because in the beginning, I don't have anyone buying yet. So I've got lots more time to spend going out and getting customers. At MKE Business Coach, ultimately, one of the key metrics you need to do to figure out if marketing is working is it bringing you sales? If not, you're going to need to realign what your process is in order to capture that. Now, just like Tanya, whenever we're launching a new product or service line, we're going to have to do some casting around to figure out what works and what doesn't. Early experimentation, ideally using an MVP model is going to be really essential here. In Tanya's case, she was scrappy. She let everyone and anyone know what she was doing, which is really great because she knew initially she's going to have to build that base. Now, she has transferred now to start growing through referrals, but I want to encourage people, you've got to map out what's that entire arc going to look like in that customer capture cycle. It's not just the life cycle of one particular customer, but your marketing efforts and your sales efforts are going to shift depending on your business model and depending on how you grow and align. Are you going to get repeat people? Are you going to get referral-based customers? What's the model that actually is going to be effective for you? And start to design for that. But ultimately, remember, the happy clients and customers that say good things to us and that refer us, that is worth a whole ton more than all the hard work we have to do to go out and prospect from scratch. So that is the gold standard to get to either repeat customers and or referral customers. And it's not going to happen overnight. Consistency is key. So at MKE Business Coach, we work with a lot of these growth businesses to figure out what stages are they in. And here's a key. Sometimes it depends on the service line that you're in. You may have launched a new product recently, and that's going to take some more effort to get out and go back to some of that early on marketing efforts. And you may have some other items that are more mature. But no matter what, there's some metrics, there's some data, there's some information that we can dig into and get an understanding. If you're not looking at that and not aligning what you're doing to the actual information that you're measuring, again, going back to does it work? That's something you need to do, and we'd love to talk to you. All right, on this other word, networking. I don't particularly like the word networking because I think it's taken on a lot of connotations that it shouldn't. I prefer relationship building, okay? When we're building relationships, we're actually building the framework so that when people refer to us, it's because they know, like, and trust us. And they get to build a relationship with us. But you know what? Don't just take it from me. Let's listen to Tanya and what she says about this process and way of networking.
I tell people all the time, don't think of it as networking, because as soon as you think of it as networking, it becomes uncomfortable and awkward. Think of it as just meeting new people. You wouldn't go to a dinner party and say, oh, I'm nervous because this is networking. But what are you doing at a dinner party? You're meeting new people. Guess what? You're networking. That's exactly what you're doing. And when I look at all of the things I'm a part of, that clients have come to me naturally out of those things, we're always networking because we're always building new relationships. I belong to a golf league. I've gotten clients from that. Why? Because when you're on the golf course, you talk about what you do. You get to know each other. And you naturally talk about, well, what do you do? And what do you do? Well, I'm a travel advisor. Oh, cool. What does that look like? And what are your favorite trips? And then I ask them, well, what do you like to do? And you build the relationship. So yeah, just get out there, do the things you love to do, meet like-minded people, build relationships, talk to people.
I love this. Just meeting new people. That's what we're out there doing. You're always networking. It's true in so many ways. Thanks, Tanya. I think enough said there. I went on to ask her about the challenges she's faced in her business journey. Let's listen to what she has to say.
In our business, there is a lot of follow-up work that needs to be done. All right. So the day that someone books something with you, you're not done, right? Because they might book a cruise with you that's 1.5 years out. Okay. So we can't even look at excursions yet. We can't even look at flights yet. We can't look at hotels yet that they might need pre or post cruise, right? So there's more work that needs to be done later. Well, how do you organize that? And then there's going to be a final payment that needs to happen sometime down the line, right? When I didn't have as much business, right? I used to have this really dirty running to-do list, and it was terrible, right? I just would put things on the list that I knew needed to be done at some point. It wasn't organized by date. It wasn't organized by priority. It wasn't organized by anything. And that worked okay when I didn't have that much business to do, right? But as it got bigger, I thought, you know what, this is not going to work forever. I was looking at different softwares for project management and task-oriented stuff, and I would have gone that route. Lucky for me, right around the time I was needing it, my franchise built into our CRM a task manager, and it was a game changer. It changed my life. That task manager runs my life because now I have systems and processes organized by task I put the tasks out there for when they need to be done. They pop up when they need to be done. I don't need to think about them till they pop back up again. And in that way, I can be comforted knowing that I'm not going to drop a ball. I have my systems and processes in place. And as you get busier and busier, you've got to have that or you're going to drop a ball.
I love this. Let's say it again. As you get busier and busier, you're going to need more processes and procedures. Sometimes you're going to need systems, but I would argue that your process and procedure is even more important than what system you put it into, because you want to avoid the garbage in, garbage out. You might need more people too. We deal with this all the time at MKE Business Coach. The key is, here's what happens. We have a certain capacity we need to get to, and doing it in whatever system, even if it's not super efficient, is good enough. Eventually, though, you're going to hit a plateau, and you're going to need to revise those processes. One of the main challenges that businesses encounter when they're really hitting their growth stride and they're hitting some of those marks, right? And they're going from $1 million to 5 million or 5 million to 10 million or whatever the next step is, what you discover is that your systems, processes, and procedures are actually meant for the business that you created last year. They're not good enough for the business that you want to create for next year. That is a significant challenge. And that's a place where we come in and really reevaluate. Each time it's possible to grow and change and adapt. And Tanya gave a great example. The Post-it method worked pretty well until she reached a certain point. Then she figured out how to integrate a critical part of a CRM in order to really start bringing value to her business. As she continues to grow, she's going to find more of those as we bring on more people, as we learn how to do additional tasks and get additional success. There's always more that can be done. And the hard part is knowing when, where, how to do it effectively, and to actually use it well once we put it in place. Now, the hard part is knowing when to put those in. When do we need to identify those? What are the most important priorities to work on first? That's the tricky part. That's when we need to go from focusing on the 72 things that are all in front of us to just the 1, 2, or 3 that are actually most important to making your business function well. That's a spot where we work all the time as business growth consultants. And again, I want to encourage you to reach out to us, MKE Business Coach, and have a discussion. Tanya goes on to share the nitty gritty of what it looks like when she decided to bite the bullet and get into the processes that she needed in order to be able to grow. Let's listen.
I'm one of those people who does struggle with delegation, even though I know that is a thing that I need to do. So I contracted with a firm. It's a VA firm, virtual assistant firm, that actually specializes in helping travel advisors. That's their niche. They are VAs for travel advisors. That's all they do. And I was hardly using them, right? Because I was so busy and I can just do it fast. I'm so fast at this. I'll just do it. But you can't keep doing that. And then the other thing that happened was I realized real quick that I'm not as clear as I think I am when I'm delegating things, right? Like I think I put this step-by-step process out there, and then the person tries to go and do it, and I missed like 3 steps. Because what's really hard about doing stuff like that is, as the business owner who's always had to do everything, you just do it. You don't even sometimes know exactly how you do it because you just do it. You just do it. So I really had to sit down and think about, how do you do this? Exactly. Step by step. Because until you do that, you can't pass it on to anybody else. So that's going much better today.
I love this, Tanya. That'll preach. Folks, look, here's the deal. For those of us who have growth goals for our businesses, you simply can't just achieve them until we learn to really pass on what we do. It's really critical. You can't hire, you can't delegate and abdicate. There's a couple of pieces that come into play here. Number one, most people are not in our minds and they can't read our minds. So you've got to figure out how to take it out of your head and document it thoroughly so that there's a process, there's a procedure. There's a lot of ways to do that. You can do it in a video, you can write it out. There's a ton of ways, the methods to do it, but it has to happen. One of the main reasons that a lot of times delegation fails is there's really poor instruction, understanding all the intricate ways to do it. Ultimately, as leaders, as we continue to grow, we have to stop working in the business and work on the business. And it's an essential way to let it go. Here's the next part. Tanya touched on this briefly. For a lot of times it feels to us like someone else doing that task only does it 60% as well or 60% as fast is what we can do. But that doesn't really matter as long as the value you get by the freed up time is a lot better deployed somewhere else. And sometimes, quite frankly, our perception of how other people are doing isn't actually reality either. So both of those you have to let go and continue to build the systems, procedures, and processes that are going to be critical to be able to enable that next stage of growth. Then this may be the same thing that you have to work on your next level of staff with as well, that they're doing the exact same thing so that you don't end up with bottlenecks and constraints in the system that are caused by people. The processes are meant to ease the flow so that people can do what they do really well and be great in their space, not to be stuck waiting for someone else to achieve a task. I went on to ask Tanya about her leadership style and how that evolved over time as she ran her business. Let's listen to what she says.
I think my leadership style has evolved to being a better delegator, being a person who, and I'm still working on this, I'm not perfect at it, but understanding that as the business owner, it isn't my job to do everything. My job is to do only the things that only I can do. And it should be someone else's job to do the rest. And being able to trust someone else to do that with your baby is hard, but you have to do it anyway. And so that's how it's evolved. I think I thought when I got to the $1 million mark that that's just where I would stay and that would be okay. And fortunately for me, the business has other plans. I was forced to build some scaling into the business and get some help. So I've evolved from being that person who just thought, yeah, I'll just build this little business and it'll be great, to no, I actually have to be a boss now and tell people what to do, correct them gently and lovingly when they do it wrong, and go on from there.
All right. In case you're not aware, Tanya's describing here the reality of life in business as small business owners. Businesses start, they ramp up and grow to stability, and then they start hitting a plateau. And when they're at that plateau, inevitably, there's a decision point to make. We can either continue to grow or we're going to decline. It is just super rare that a business just continues to plateau because everything else is changing around you. You can bet on it. Sometimes the decline happens really quickly. Sometimes it happens slowly. You can probably think about a lot of businesses that you're like, yeah, whatever happened to them? There's some brand names that you probably still use that aren't even around anymore because they were so popular. They made their way into our language and our lexicon. And now you look back and you're like, huh, whatever happened to them? They completely missed the mark. So Tanya was forced to make a decision. Did she want to say no to new business and stay small? Or did she want the opportunity to grow? She had to decide where to latch on. Her dream was not to manage people, but the business growth was dependent on her being willing to do that. So she had to get a process in place and get the support she needed so that her new business was able to grow. So wherever you're at, I want you to evaluate, where are you in that process? What additional support do you need to bring on in order to be ready to continue to grow? And a lot of times you don't have to be perfect where you're at today. That's not a realistic ballpark. The question is, if your team's already stretched and you've hit that plateau and you're looking to make the growth move, which is absolutely essential to continue to stay alive in your business, are you ready with the building blocks to be able to make that move? Love to talk with you about that and see where you're at. I went on to ask Tanya about how she stays on top of trends in her industry. You can imagine there's a whole ton in the travel industry and it can change really quickly. Let's listen.
I do subscribe to a number of travel industry related publications that are constantly bombarding my inbox with headlines and things like that. So that's definitely something that we all have to do in our respective industries. My franchise organization has webinars upon webinars about destinations, about different suppliers, about our travel insurance supplier. Like, they're going constantly. And also even webinars from other like really successful franchise owners who are like spilling the tea and helping everybody like understand. So I do that. I do some learning activities through the franchise. Every supplier out there has a training program. Okay. Princess has a training program. Celebrity has a training program. FunJet has a training program. Every land supplier has a training program online that you can do. You could never do all of them, right? But you should do the ones that have to do with the stuff that you're selling the most of. And that's kind of how I've approached it. I think there's two ways you could do this. You could go into it and say, I'm just going to try to learn as much as I can, as fast as I can. Or you can learn as you go. I've chosen learn as you go. Okay. when I just sold my first Azamara cruise as an example. Okay. Azamara is a more luxury line. Hadn't sold any of it before. Well, guess what? I'm now up to speed on Azamara because I needed to be, because that's where my business went. The other thing I do is I do attend industry conferences. Last week, in fact, I was at the Signature Travel Network conference where I got to meet with different hotels, different destination representatives, different tour operators and suppliers. There were probably, 700 booths. Again, I couldn't have visited them all, so you need to be strategic. What is it that my business needs right now? Who do I need to learn from at this conference?
I really like how Tanya summarized that. There are really two ways that we end up getting the knowledge in order to be able to grow our business. We can drop everything and attend the seminar and get certified and get the credentials maybe that are going to help us build in. And then we can also do essentially on-the-job training. We're going to learn it as we go. Now, here's the reality. Both tend to happen all the time. There's just a balance factor. How much do you want to do? We're all about helping you grow. We think the opportunities don't necessarily stop and wait while we always continue to go training. In fact, sometimes, Brent's opinion, I think that training can end up being a crutch. I just have to learn one more thing and then I'm ready to go. The second we sense that, we're like, nope, off the diving board. You need two conditions in order to be in business, in order to pursue this growth opportunity. One is a product or service to be able to sell, and the other are customers who are ready, willing, and able to buy it from you. That's a space you want to move into. You can supplement, you can build the plan as you go. We can do some of that on the job training, and we're going to continue to learn as we go and be strategic about it. If you want to talk more about that balance, I'd be happy to do that. Do please reach out to me. It can feel really, really uncomfortable, particularly for those of you who might be a C or an S on the disc profile. You're like, we're not going to know everything in advance. The thing that make you really uncomfortable, we're not actually going to know everything ever. It is always continually changing, because as soon as we hit that plateau, we have to change the business model. Sometimes we have to break the business model in order to get it to continue to grow. But don't worry, you don't have to do it alone. And there are plenty of times when getting those certifications, getting those additional understandings, attending those trainings are critical as a supplement to the holistic plan of how you get knowledge. Well, like you, I can't do this on my own. I want to thank Chris Crane for doing the music for our outro, and thank Kate Halfwasson, my business partner and wife, who does all the editing to bring these episodes to you. If you like what you're listening to, I want to encourage you to please go out there, share, like, comment, and subscribe. So again, thank you for joining me on this episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. I'm Brent Halfwasson, Milwaukee Small Business Coach, and I want to invite Chris to take us out.
Ready to take